What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Person Who podcast. As you can tell, I have a very special guest with me today. I've got the one, the only, Aaron Barth. I convinced him to come over and talk. So thanks so much for coming and hanging out with us.
I am excited to be here.
Yeah, are you excited?
Yeah, okay, I'm excited. A little nervous. Because I'm not the avid podcaster.
Which he should be. If Aaron had a podcast, you know we would all listen to your podcast.
I don't know. Maybe.
He would talk all things airplanes, which I would subscribe to that. Because
would you really?
I would. You know I love airplanes, so I would. That's actually how me and you started hanging out and chatting. Was I found out you were a pilot, and I was like, oh, I have so many questions. Let me sit down and ask.
I kind of felt like when that happened, I still remember, if you remember that, it was on a Wednesday night. I think it was after service, youth service. And I think the only thing that was missing was that light right behind you, the interrogation lamp, because I felt like, what's going on? This is 20 questions.
I had so many questions.
And so once we were done, I looked over at Whit, and she looked at me, smiled real big, and she said, she's interested. And I said, she was very interested.
Very. So I didn't grow up, like when we would go on vacations, we would always drive, no matter how long it was. My mom does not like flying, so therefore none of us liked flying. So when I met Aaron and I found out he was a pilot, I was like, this is great. Well, then me and Easton started dating, and then I got to go on vacations with them, and y'all don't really drive. Y'all fly.
We do not, and there's probably something to that. You know, when I was younger, same. Every time we went, when I was a kid, we drove. I remember very little. I think there was one time whenever I was in high school that we actually flew for a family vacation from Ohio out to Phoenix, Arizona for a week. And that was a lot of fun, but it didn't happen very often. So everywhere we went, we drove. And that's probably what has gotten us to where we are today, which is flying everywhere. Because I thought, are we ever going to get there? Because we're always driving long distances, like what you guys do, hours and hours and hours.
Hours on hours in the car with everybody, crammed, everyone's yelling, then we're mad. So it was always very eventful. But now I will say, I do enjoy flying. I still get nervous.
I know.
I still ask Aaron every single question in the book when there's a bump or a loud noise or we go through a storm. I'm like, are we going to be okay? Are we going to make it? And I do feel really safe when I fly with you because in my mind, if anything bad happens, I'm just going to send you up to the front and I'm going to tell the pilot he needs to move and I'm going to say, we've got Aaron
Knock
here.
on the door, move
Aaron
aside.
knows what to do, so no stress at all. And honestly, I do have to go ahead and give you props in front of a camera because you're really the reason that me and Easton started dating. I think it was you.
Really?
Sometimes Whitney and Rachel will argue that it was one of them, but I really think you're the person that put the bug in Easton's ear for us to start hanging out.
There was a bug that was put in his ear. That is true. Yeah. I don't know if the viewers, listeners know the story, but basically when you started coming around the church looking for, I think, internship and just community and whatnot when you were in college, you were coming consistently. And after church one day, I think Easton and I were going to pick up food after church. And I mentioned to him, I said, hey, Easton, hear me out. Just one word, just one name, Brady. And there was a guy whose name was Brady who went to our church. And he's like, yeah, Brady. Okay, what about him? I said, no, the female Brady. He said, oh, yeah. I said, I just told him, I said, hey, keep your eye on that one. Yeah. she's pretty cute and she seems special. And so, that led to, I think, the next week on Sunday or maybe 2 weeks after when I look over and I saw him, I thought, talking to you, teaching you about a camera.
A camera,
Is that right? Okay.
I had, for some reason, which if you know me, I'm not a camera person at all. It's why Easton does all that stuff.
Yeah. How many times have you picked up a camera and used it since back then?
I'd like to say 0. I think maybe I was also playing into the fact that Easton was like, do you want to learn how to run the camera? I was like, sure, why not? Of course I would. But we owe it to Aaron. So this is my public confession that I think Aaron might have been the one that got me and Easton talking to each other.
I definitely do believe that I was a prominent figure in helping getting a ring on your finger.
That is true because when Easton proposed, it was actually at one of your airports.
That's right.
It was.
I got to fly you guys.
And Aaron was flying us. Yeah. So that was probably the safest I've ever felt.
That's true.
On an airplane, was because Aaron was flying. But we were also in a very small one, which was way different than flying on a big airplane because I feel like you couldn't feel as many of the bumps and stuff weirdly, but also Aaron was flying. So I was like, we're going to be fine. We're going to make it back to the ground. It's going to be good.
Okay.
But before we jump into our fun conversation, I want to ask if you remember what our first conversation we ever had together was when we were out this might not have been our first, but one of our first, when we were out for Easton's birthday at Grace. Do you remember one of the first things I asked you?
I do remember. And maybe it's subliminally still on my mind, which is why I'm wearing a hat today. But one of the first things that you had mentioned or asked, I guess, when we sat down at this really nice restaurant to celebrate our son's birth on his birthday, we kind of got settled in, and no sooner than the water had arrived at the table, you just said, "So, Aaron, I got a question."
Yep.
And I thought, okay, yeah, what color of socks am I wearing? I mean, what a shirt? I don't know. Nope. Mm-mm. You went in the deep end and went straight in for it, didn't you? You went for the jugular.
I did.
Yeah. So the question was, for the viewers' enjoyment, was, so Aaron, when did you start going bald?
Yep.
When did you start losing your hair? And I thought, whoa.
Wow.
And I guess it was a reaction. I didn't even look at my wife like, what? I looked at my son like, are you hearing this? This is the girl that is celebrating your birthday that we've found important enough to participate in this dinner. And he just looked at me, kind of closed his eyes and shook his head a little bit like, I don't know.
I just had to know. I had to get down to it. I had to ask. I had to know what I was getting into. And I was just curious. And I'm not really good at like slowly transition. I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to say it. So question,
we found that out.
This is it. So, but it was funny.
It was funny. And we got there. I mean, I think I gave you a pretty honest answer.
Yeah, you did. You did. It was good.
Yeah, I think, and listen, I get it. Like, you're probably over there wondering, okay, so if you started losing his hair, then when's my potential husband going to potentially lose his hair and all that? You just wanted to know.
I needed to know, but Easton still has all his hair.
He's got all that hair.
That's actually one of his. If you ever want to get under his skin, just be like, what's that spot on your head right there? He'll
hairline changing?
Out. He'll buy like thickening shampoo. It's hilarious, but no, it was fun.
That's fun.
But all that.
I love it.
So
you cut to the chase, which is probably why the people love this podcast.
I'm telling you, we talked about it all. And kind of my hope in my heart when I started this podcast was that it would just be a place where we could have open conversations about things that challenge us and encourage us, and ultimately for people to know that they're not alone. When I was younger, my biggest thing, the biggest lie that the enemy would tell me is that I was alone, and so I would start to isolate myself, and I wouldn't reach out and talk to anybody because kind of where I'm from, it was like, just make sure you have all your stuff together, be put together. Don't let anybody in too much, because then what if they find out what's wrong with you? And so my heart is always to create a space where people can be like, oh gosh, thank God. It's not just me going through this. And so I wanted to sit down with you today, because I know when people look at Aaron Barth, they see this successful and awesome person. But I kind of want to take it all the way back to when you were younger. And kind of start there with your story, because you and Whit are both pastors at our church. But what people don't always know is there was before you were pastors, there was a story. So tell us a little bit about y'all's younger years together.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how far back. I'm 40. I'm going to be 49 in November, so that's bonkers.
You're about to approach the biggest birthday ever.
I know, that's
and
ridiculous.
I'm excited. I already have a plan for what we're going to do for your birthday. It's going to be so fun.
I'm not looking forward to it. But so lots of life lived over here. But, grew up in Salem, Ohio, very small town, similar to where you grew up. Someone finds out about something and now the whole town knows about it. Very similar. So I totally empathize and understand where you're coming from, which is, when you're talking to people, you kind of want to keep things close to the chest and somewhat guarded, because, if you tell one, you tell the whole town,
Everybody.
Right? So I get that. I understand that. Graduated high school there, moved out of there right after. I went to flight school a year after that. So I went to some community college in Arizona where we moved to with my family. Then started up flight school. So while in flight school, I grew up in church, very active in the church. My parents were very active. I played drums when I was a teenager in our church. And so church was a part of my life. It really was. I attended, but also tried to serve even at a teenage age. And so, I went to college in Tulsa, Oklahoma. When I went there, I wanted to find a church where I can get kind of plugged into and get community outside of just the people who I knew at school. So I found a church affiliated with where I used to go to with my family, and that is where I met Whitney. Now I went there for a while, and it wasn't probably a year before Whitney kind of caught the new guy walking around on occasion at the church. And so Whitney, my wife, she's the type that wants to get to the root of things too. She cuts right to the chase and wants to know, hey, who's the new people? She's kind of like their church's welcoming committee in a way. And so this new guy, younger guy, like what's he about? So so she kind of started coming around shortly after I started going to church here. Anyway, we were friends, then became dating, and then became engaged, and then we got married right around the time in which I finished graduating college, flight school. So lived there, had Easton a year after we got married, and then had McKinley 2 years after that, just under 2 years after that, and I'd say they were there probably 4 or 5 years before we ended up moving from Tulsa down to Texas. And so flew airplanes for quite a while, and then made a transition into airport administration, airport management, and then that is what brought us down to Texas in 2009. And
since
we've
2009.
Been here ever since.
Okay.
So been doing this airport administration thing for wildly almost 17, 18 years. And which is way more than what I went to school for, which was flying airplanes. I did that for about 7 or 8 years. And so that's kind of how we got here.
And Aaron will never brag on himself, but he manages 3 airports. Did I say that correctly? 3 airports.
Yeah, that's true.
In Fort Worth: Spinks, Alliance, and Meacham.
Very well done.
I know. I know now.
I'm telling you what.
I know.
You're listening. It's always nice to see that you listen. And so, that's true. My official title is Assistant Aviation Director. I work for the city of Fort Worth. I've been working for them for 16 years now. And started down at Spinks, and then they moved me up to Meacham about 7 years ago. And so I manage that airport, Meacham International Airport, but then also as Assistant Aviation Director, I've got a hand to play in Spinks as well as Pro Field. So I'm going to meetings, I'm interjecting conversations, things like that. And so, there are 3 airports that we have, and I have a hand to play in all 3.
Yeah.
So.
And so you manage all the airports, but you also serve at Moore Church as a pastor with Whit. Yeah. So you kind of have 2 jobs, for lack of better words. Kind of feels that way, right?
Working one pro bono, and the other one that pays me.
Exactly.
And so that's kind of nice. But no, that's true. And honestly, I don't look at it as a job,
right?
Church, Moore Church. I look at it as an opportunity, a need. I feel called. To be able to be involved there. And so, people will ask me occasionally, what do you do? And I'm like, whatever. I'll sweep the floors. I'll clean the toilets. Whatever.
Sometimes he's a kid's character.
That's
He's been
true.
the mad scientist this past month in Kids with us.
It was a lot of fun, by the way. A lot of fun. It was a good time.
That's
so
right.
honestly, though, I'll do whatever I need to do. Nothing's too small. And I don't ever look at things that way. I'm just like, I love this place. I love the people in this place. I know the people that are coming to this place to attend are in need. And so help me if I don't do everything I can to help them when they're in their time of need. It's kind of how I feel. And so, I just try to do whatever I can to help.
That's awesome. It's so cool. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today, because a lot of people so I work in full-time ministry, and that's what I went to college for, not what I started out as, but where I ended up as. But a lot of times people kind of think in order to be in full-time ministry, you have to be working at a church. You have to have some sort of pastor title or something like that, and that is when you're in full-time ministry. But what's true is actually you're in full-time ministry when you're at the airport, regardless of his pastor is in front of your name or not. But I started this conversation with Easton and Mick the other day because we all work at the church, and sometimes it feels like we're in this church bubble.
Yeah, the bubble.
So we're around people that believe the same, that act the same, that think the same, that use the same terms as us, that understand the same as us. And sometimes it's kind of jarring to step out of the church bubble and then go into, for lack of better words, the secular world and try to do what the Bible tells us to do and go and make disciples and go and tell people about Jesus, which is sounds like hypocritical saying that as someone who works in full-time ministry. But when you're in this church bubble and then you take a step out of it for a second, you're like, whoa, there's real people, there's a real world, there's real things that goes on, and we're not just all, oh, Jesus is good, we're blessed and highly favored,
it's true,
and stuff like that. And so I kind of wanted to talk about that today because a lot of people that I know do work in the secular workplace, but also want to be able to be a light for Jesus.
Yes.
And so what are like some practical ways that you do that at the airport? Being a light.
Great question.
Yeah.
Great observation. It's true. I've seen it, working somewhat in ministry and then having my whole family working directly in ministry.
Yeah.
I see that. I see that. And I will say there have been seasons in time that I've either flying airplanes or working in airport administration where I've felt, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, am I, as a man, I know as women too, we want to make an impact. We want to make an impact, but make an impact on things that really matter.
Yeah.
What really matters? Well, I'd say eternity, and people's soul as it relates to it, that matters.
Yeah.
Making as much money as you can, I know matters to some, and climb the corporate ladder. These types of things, yes, the secular jobs of this world. That's what goals, prevalent goals, exist for a lot of people. For me, I want obviously to make sure that we're financially stable, but then also I want everybody to be taken care of and happy with the lane that they're running in and the direction that God's calling them to be. And so for me, in those seasons when I'm like, what am I doing with this job, with my workplace, things like that, I have a conversation usually with my wife or with you guys, but then I also pray about it a lot and think, God, what do you have me here for? What am I doing here? And what I've found is that I'm here for a reason. I'm in the position that I am in for a reason. And then I quickly am reminded of I guess the gratitude aspect of why I'm doing what I'm doing and why I get to do what I get to do. Because there are people out in the world, in the secular workplace, that are in need. Yeah. And yes, the church bubble is a real thing. I know people come to our church on Sundays and Wednesday nights that are in need. And I recognize that as you guys do too. But I also understand that the places that I go, the places that that everybody goes to in the secular workplace, yes, there are people there that are in need too. Now, I will say it was a challenge for me whenever I was flying airplanes in administration in the way of the people who I work with and the people who I deal with typically are very affluent. They have a very, very high amount of disposable income. And so the people that are not flying commercial airlines, they're flying private, and if they feel like going somewhere, they call and you charter a flight, a private jet flight. And so these are the people who I deal with on a somewhat regular basis. So when you think about that, you're thinking these people are not in need.
Right.
That could be a very common thing that you can think of. They've got everything they need. They've got the money. They've got the means. But what I've learned very quickly while doing this is that there will be a time that they are in need. In the Bible, it says, "In this world you will have trouble."
Right.
And it doesn't specify, whether you're rich or poor, whether you have money or you don't, you will. You will have trouble, right? And so my goal is to be around, to be available, and be approachable for when they do have trouble. I remember years ago when I was flying corporate aircraft, I flew a family. I flew them out to Provo, Utah. they had a daughter who was a senior, I think, in high school, and she liked to ski.
Right.
They lived in Tulsa, so not really a ski town at all, right? But they wanted to go skiing, and so we flew them out to Provo, Utah. We got there. We knew that they were going skiing. Surprisingly, a bit, their parents decided to say yes when she asked them to go up via helicopter and be dropped off or dropped out of the helicopter on top of a mountain summit,
crazy.
and then her freestyle ski down from this place in which you can't get a ski lift up to. You just drop out of a helicopter. Anyway, that happened. The girl goes out of the helicopter, lands, and immediately falls and gets off her skis, and now she's tumbling down the mountain. And so we get a phone call from them saying, we need to go back home early. And when we did, I mean, the girl looked like she got ripped up by a bear.
Exactly.
I mean, it was, broken bones all over the place, black eyes, casts everywhere. And she got beat up pretty bad. And so there is trouble. There's need. And so, I wanted them to know that they were in my prayers, that she was in my prayer, that she would, receive the healing that she needed, and all the things. And so, yes, those are types of things that, you try to just, again, be as approachable as you can, let your light shine, and let people know, without jamming it down their throats and standing on a soapbox and saying, you're going to hell, if you don't know Jesus.
Exactly.
You don't have to do that.
Right.
People are more observant than what you give them credit for. So it doesn't take them long to know where you stand, especially if you're consistent at doing it. And so that's how I try to, again, to live my life.
Would you say, because you work for the city of Fort Worth, so there's a lot of, what is the term you used, affluent people that you're around who do seem like they kind of have it all together. They're very successful. They don't like to let you see their weaknesses, right? It's kind of like a dog eats dog world when you're working in business and stuff like that. And have you ever felt any sort of pressure being around people like that, knowing that sometimes maybe the Lord will drop something on your heart and be like, hey, you should go have a conversation with them, or hey, you should invite them this Sunday, we're having an event, or hey, she looks like she's having a really bad day, you should go talk to her. Has there ever been a time where you felt a pressure of like, but they're going to think I'm so weird if I step out and say something? Right.
Absolutely. That's in the back. It's always in the back of your mind. I mean, you're not human if you don't feel that. And further, we live in an age where today, in the culture, I would say you've just got to be careful with how you do it.
Right.
And not being too forceful, not being too forward, because there's all different types of people that have all different types of beliefs and religions and whatnot. And so, I love working for the city of Fort Worth and all the people that, there's over 8,000 people that work there. So there's a lot of folks, right? But there's a lot of different beliefs. And so, as you can imagine, we can't be having everybody being forceful and trying to jam their belief down your throat.
Right.
And so I just try to take the approach where it's somewhat passive, but then also if there is something that comes right to my doorstep, that I use that as an opportunity to let them know, hey, I'm here for you. I'm praying for you.
Right.
You'll be in my thoughts of prayer, things like that. And if, excuse me, if they lean into that, then I will lean into that. Right. And so it's kind of more of an organic experience that I try to employ so that they don't ever get the impression that I'm over here just trying, to shove it down the throats. Exactly. Right. And so, So now I don't do that right every time. Yeah. There are times that I remember, I can specifically remember driving home and thinking, there is an opportunity that I missed. There was an opportunity I remember there was a moment 2 months ago that I missed. There was a gentleman who was leaving. He had worked for 23 years within our system, and knew the guy, Shoot, he and I drove down to Galveston together to go to a conference, an aviation conference years ago. So through that, I've gotten to know him and kept up with him, and we worked together, so I know him pretty well. He's a believer, and I remember having probably about 50 to 75 people in a room where we were celebrating him before he was ready to move on and transition out. I remember feeling it, right in my chest. Aaron, you should speak into this guy right now in front of everybody, and let him know these things. And I didn't do it. I actually looked over at my boss and looked at him and gave him a look like, "Are you going to say something?" And he just looked at me and shook his head, "No." And so therefore I didn't say anything. And man, I kicked myself. So anyway. We went through it, and then once it was adjourned, I walked over to him personally and spoke to him and said the things that I felt called to say to him, and just kind of built him up, and in his faith, and in the Lord, and his steps being guided and whatnot. And so said those things to him personally, but I didn't. I really do. I felt like the Holy Spirit urged me to say something, and I didn't. I felt really guilty about that, and certainly wanted to make sure I told him that, but just I did that directly and privately, and so there are things that happen, that you try to do your best you can. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, but just try to be available and willing.
Exactly. I think that's the most important part. I mean, I've had other jobs that weren't in ministry, and I remember even just like going to college, there was always something inside of me that I always wanted to make sure everyone felt seen and felt loved. And so there would be opportunities that, now I know it was the Lord. Looking back on it, then I probably didn't know it was the Lord. But now I know it was the Lord, where I would be like, oh, I should go talk to that girl, or oh, I should go say something to that guy. He's sitting by himself, or oh, she looks sad. Let me just speak into her life and just bring some sort of joy. And I know a lot of times people that work in the secular workplace, like you're saying, you have to be careful. You have to be sensitive because there's all different kinds of things. You never know if you're going to offend somebody or if you're going to step on their toes. So you always want to be careful. But I do believe there's some sort of grace and that follows you when you just decide to step out in obedience, like you did to that guy, and just say, hey, this was on my heart. I wanted to speak into your life. I hope you know all these things, and just encourage them. And actually, I know a lot of people that listen to the podcast work in secular jobs. A lot of people are teachers. A lot of people work in businesses, at banks and stuff like that.
It's the mission field.
Right, exactly.
It's literally the mission field.
I was about to say, that's what the Bible tells us, to go and make disciples in all the ends of the world. And that means your world. So your job, when you're at the store, all kinds of stuff, there's going to be opportunities presented to you.
There are opportunities. And I know it's funny because Whitney and I have talked about this, and in times where we would be out and about, we go to a restaurant or we do whatever, we are who we are, and we don't change depending on the environment that we're in. Right?
Exactly.
That's the way we are, and that's the way you should be, in my opinion. Well, we're at a restaurant, we're sitting there, and we're talking to the server, and there are times that we'll use that as an opportunity to invite them to church and whatnot, and oftentimes it's less on my mind, because I'm just here with my wife or with my friends, and I'm that's what I'm here for.
Right.
But then for them, or my wife or our friends, Tress and Rachel, if we're out to dinner, they're using that as an opportunity to witness or try to bring that person to church, and it wasn't initially on my mind, and I think that's probably because, man, I'm doing this every day. I'm out and working in the workplace. Whereas, Whitney or you guys or Trust, you guys aren't. And so, you guys have different methods of opportunities to witness to those that that aren't stepping foot into our church, and so I think that's kind of interesting.
It is. It's super interesting. And another question that I wanted to ask you, kind of working in the secular workplace and stuff, and we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but there is this sort of, I guess, lack of better words, pressure that you put on yourself to be the best version of Jesus. Or I know that I did that. It was like, I could be the only version of Jesus that they see all day. And I just got this immense amount of pressure on me. But I wanted to ask you if this was anything that you've ever faced before, knowing that you have faith, knowing that the Bible calls you to share your faith, but also knowing even though the Bible says promotion doesn't come from man, it comes from above, but there is a physical human being that does withhold or give you promotion. Has
Without
that
a
ever
doubt.
affected kind of how you represent Jesus in the workplace, for lack of better
Great
words?
question. Great question. She had a great question there, guys. It was a really good one. I try not to let that happen.
Yeah.
So I'll go back to probably 7 years ago where my boss was having a personal issue with his relationship with his wife. They were not seeing eye to eye.
Yeah.
He had asked me, hey, can we go have lunch? And I thought, okay. And I'm thinking it's about me,
Yeah.
my performance. Maybe
Yeah.
it's good or bad. I don't know. And so I was like, sure, yeah, absolutely. So we went to have lunch, and it had nothing to do with work.
Right.
It only had to do with his personal life, his relationship with his wife. And he basically told me, hey, I'm trying this, that, and the other, and it's just not working out. And I think we're going to end up getting a divorce, is what he said. And so I heard that loud and clear and thought, okay, I felt like this was an opportunity to try to help him. And so I gave him some advice. I prayed over him. I told him I was going to be praying for him and his wife.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, long story short, within a year later, they ended up moving forward with a divorce. And so it didn't work out. And I felt a little bit bad about that. I thought, well, I don't want it to be my fault. Is there anything I could have done better, differently, helped him anymore, anything like that? But sometimes you can only do what you can do, right?
Exactly.
And so with that being said, he was the same individual a few years later that did promote me without really me looking for that or asking for that.
Right,
But
right.
he did provide that, and so that was great. That was great. Sometimes in life, when that happens, it's very seasonal. It's very fleeting. It's very temporary. Sometimes, I'll say this, that same individual who did promote got in some trouble at work and ended up having to be removed from that position. But he was during that time was looking to really try to pin it on anybody else but himself.
Right.
And I was one of those people that he was trying to pin that on, and that was tough, right?
Yeah,
because
right.
in my mind, we went through some deep stuff, some
Right,
personal
right.
stuff, and now here we are.
Yeah.
And so there's also a heart guarding that you have to take
Right.
and take on, and think, man, did what I say did he not hear that? Did he not listen? Like, what in the world? And so there are some things that occur, in life with individuals that you might invest and pour into a lot. But then also, sometimes it works out. Sometimes maybe it doesn't stick as much as you think it might.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know that that's a real thing that people really think about is like, I want to be the best representation. I want to share.
Sure.
I want to encourage.
Absolutely.
But also, yes, there is a person that actually has a say so in what I do.
Yep.
And so I know, as much as we talked about it earlier, like you want to make sure that you're providing for your family, that you're able to take care of them, that you're able to live a good and fun and enjoyable life. And money does play a factor in that. So I know sometimes it is really hard when you're presented with these opportunities at your workplace where you're like, oh, I want to, but I think it's just easy in that sense to forget that promotion does come from the Lord.
Without a doubt.
The Lord's hand is in everything, regardless of you knowing it or not.
It really is.
Yeah.
And sometimes, oftentimes that comes in the form of man, or your supervisor, your boss,
Right.
your organization that might bring that promotion to you.
Right.
But ultimately, your promotion doesn't come from the east to west; it comes from the Lord, and that
Exactly.
is something that I have had to adhere to quite a bit. In today's age, it's real easy to try to chase and run and transition and move on and move up and things like that,
Right.
versus staying.
Yeah.
Versus staying.
Being consistent.
There have been moments in my career, in my job life, where I've had the opportunity to leave. People have reached out to me about other positions to consider outside of where I'm at right now, and I've had decisions to make, and I've chosen to stay, and I feel like the Lord has rewarded me in a multitude of ways, not just in money, but also in work-life balance.
Yeah.
So I have a number of different gratitude moments
Yeah.
where I'm like, thank you, God, for having me grounded and stay where I'm at. And so with that being said, people like to run, people like to chase, but I'll say, and there's some reason behind that, and some good reasons.
Yeah.
But if your heart behind it isn't pure, isn't necessarily the right motive to take, then maybe you should reconsider and think about it, because we all get antsy.
Yeah.
I mean, I get
we all
antsy.
get excited.
Yeah. And we think,
especially
wonder what's out there, what's on the other side of the fence, is the grass greener. And I understand that.
Yeah.
But then also there is something, to everybody sits. It's funny. I get this illustration where everybody sits at a table and they're holding cards and their challenges, their maybe setbacks, or there may be things that you would rather trade in and have something different, whether it's, the shift that you're on, or whether it's your pay, or whether it's your boss and the organization you work for, and these things that are on cards. And if everybody were to lay down those cards to say, I don't want these anymore. I want something different. And when you lay down those cards and they're face up, and then you look at everybody else's cards on the table, there's a good possibility that their cards might not be any better than yours.
Right, yeah.
And so you're like, oh, shoot. You know what? I'll go ahead and pick up my cards and hang on to them a while longer.
Right,
You know what I mean? And so those are some of the things that kind of oftentimes roll around in my head.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's this I'm going to use the word epidemic in my generation, and then a few generations under me as well, of like, girl boss your way through it, hustle, chase. There's this unrealistic expectation that we've put on ourselves that we need to be millionaires by the age of 20. And that's just not a possibility.
Wow.
And I mean, for some people, sure, that's great and that's wonderful, but I do believe that there is some sort of power in staying consistent and staying where you are and staying planted, and not just chasing after the next big opportunity or the next big speaking engagement or the next $100,000. I feel like there's something there to speak to, just stay where you are, stay planted, stay
super
put,
wise,
and it will come. Because it's hard to not want what you see on social media, and you see all these younger influencers that have all of this money, and it's so easy to compare yourself to them and be like, dude, I still live with my parents.
I'm so far away.
I'm so far away from that. They're my age. I don't understand.
Right.
But exactly what you said. If we place all of our cards down, you have no idea what that person on the other side of the phone is going through.
No idea. You have no idea. And obviously you have to put effort toward it, to whatever it is, whether you're trying to be a millionaire at 20 or whether you're trying to, reach the corner office at work. Whatever it is, you have to put effort towards it. And that takes time, and that takes effort and things. And so really it's what's your greatest effort going toward? And so, I think the Bible is pretty clear that the priorities should be your relationship with Him.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so there's got to be time there spent with your relationship with Him. And then the next is, if you're married, it's your relationship with your spouse.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's your relationship with your family, your kids, your spouse, and all, your family. And then your effort and your work, your job, your occupation.
Yeah.
And so when you look at that list of priorities, work is pretty far down there, right?
Pretty far down.
Yeah. And so it's weird how, not weird, but it's interesting how if you have these other things set up well and you're doing them efficiently and diligently, a lot of times other things will fall into place.
Right.
Okay. And so when I've given constant focus to the Lord and to my spouse and to you guys, to my family, work is important. There's no doubt. You got to work hard. And when you're there, you work hard. But also it tends to come easier, especially when you have these other things in place where if they're not going well, Now it's a distraction. Now now your mind is elsewhere when maybe it should be on work, right? And so if you get the priority right, and then you really work hard to make sure that those things are working well, which they're not always going to work well. There's going to be challenges, you know, that pop up. But if you are able to try to work your hardest at making sure you keep the priorities in alignment, oftentimes the Lord will be able to help lead and guide and promote and you know provide and whatnot. And so you know, for me, money is great, you know, and you know, it's nice to have promotions and, you know, increases and things like that. But really, the thing that especially in the last decade for me is that the gratitude isn't coming from the increase or the promotion or the money increase that I've gotten. That's not where it comes from. It comes from the Lord showing me, look at what you have. Look at what I've done for you. You know, money, the amount of money that I make or can make doesn't affect, it doesn't influence how my son's going to treat his wife.
Right.
It's not going to affect you know, my daughter's relationship with the Lord by the amount of money that I make, by the amount of provision that I can provide my family. It might make it more comfortable, but it doesn't. It's irrelevant, you know. And so my point is, that's just a means. It's an avenue to be able to do some things and have some moments with my family and with my spouse, with my wife, and that's it, right? And so, I want to work hard, and I work with people at my workplace where I spend more time with them, more than my wife or more than my kids, because my waking hours are spent at work, right? And so, more often than not, I see these people. So certainly, I want to make sure that I have a good impression, a positive impression. I'll let my light shine.
Exactly.
Even when there's days that I go to work that I do not feel like letting my light shine. I do not. I'm not feeling it. Right.
Exactly.
But I have to choose.
For sure.
Hey, I'm here for a reason, and it's a blessing.
It's true.
And I have to have gratitude because what I'm doing right here with my workplace, it helps us be able to do what we want to do at home as a family.
Exactly. It's so true. Makes so much sense. Good. Yes. And so before we go, I usually ask the person who I've had on to pray over the person that we're talking to. So if that's you, and if you work in a secular workplace, or you work with people who maybe don't believe the same as you, and you found something that Aaron said encouraging or challenging, I hope that you really do take it to heart, that you don't just listen to it and let it just roll out the other ear and be like, oh, but you don't understand. Because what's true is that in the past 5 years that I've got to be a part of Aaron's life, I have seen him be consistent. I have seen him be diligent. And he's taught me a whole different level of gratitude to express, oh, wow, God has actually been really good in my life, and how that shifts things when you put gratitude at the top. And I love what you said about keeping your priorities in check, because I really do think that that's the most important, to keep it the Lord, your spouse, if you're married, and then your family, and then work. Because sometimes we like to put work up here.
Oh, I know.
Just to make sure. And it happens to all of us, because we want to make sure that we provide. But like,
well, I'm going to slip in something here, one more thing. And that is this. Because I have the opportunity to get to do what I get to do at my workplace, but also at my church, it's really easy for us to not take the church job and elevate it, basically above some of the things that we talked about priority-wise, because it's a church, because it's a higher calling, right? It's easy to do that, I'm close to that because my whole family's in it. My best friends are in it, and so it's real easy to do. And church is important. It's Christ's bride. Absolutely, all the things. It's important, but also when it's your job, it is your job. Yes. And there is an alignment there that still needs to be honored.
Yes,
and considered. That, hey, there's sometimes that we've got to have a work-life balance here. 100%. And so that's something that I from my position, it's tough, right? But also I see it. So it's one of those things that when you're working full-time ministry as an occupation, it can feel different. Well, it's different than a secular job. It is different than a secular job, but it's still a job.
Still a job.
And you got to make sure you know where that falls,
100%.
even though it's it's a high calling.
Exactly.
You take serious.
It's so true. Yeah. It's so good. Well, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me today. This was so much fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it. But before we go, I'm going to ask you to pray over the person that's listening.
Absolutely. Love it. God, we love you. We thank you so much for the time that we've gotten to spend together and the time that we've gotten to honor you. God, you are our great provider. You are where our provision, our providing comes from. And so I thank you for that. Lord, I pray for the people that are listening, wherever they are, whatever position they're in. I pray, Lord, that you will lead them, guide them, speak to them, let them find gratitude in whatever it is they're doing, whatever it is. Let them understand that you're with them and that all they need to do is to look to you, and that you will help them. You will lead them and guide them through whatever it is that they're going through. So I pray, Lord, that for them, I pray that as they work in their workplace, that their light will shine for you, that they will be approachable, that they will have the joy of the Lord, and that it will be their strength, so that when somebody that they're working with is going through it, that they'll be in a great position to provide the light of you in their lives. And so lead them, guide them, and give them gratitude in their everyday life at home and at work. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen. Yeah. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.